Good morning, evening, or afternoon, YouTube, and welcome back to PSP, aka Pawn Shop Pistols, the only YouTube channel where every firearm I review is purchased from a pawn shop. Today's firearm is the first 22 we've had on the channel, and I think it's a great place to start with this caliber. The Ruger MK series has a long history, going back to 1949 with the Ruger Standard, being the first product produced by Sturm, Ruger & Company. In the years following World War II, Bill Ruger acquired a pair of Japanese Nambu pistols from a returning U.S. Marine, which he was successfully able to duplicate in his garage. Using the Nambu as an outline, along with the bolt system, Ruger produced his first working prototype, which, after he was able to get funding from Alex Sturm, they named simply the Ruger Standard. What we have here today is the Mark III model, which saw production from 2004 to 2016 before being succeeded by the Mark IV. The Mark III improves on many of the previous model's designs, including adding a visible chamber indicator. So does this piece of firearm history deserve all the praise it receives? Or is it just another case of firearm nostalgia branded with the iconic Ruger logo? Let's take a closer look. Welcome back to the channel, everyone, and if you're new here, it's good to have you. Today, we are taking a look at an iconic piece of firearms history. That's right, it's the Ruger Mark III. Now, most people who have shot a firearm have shot a .22, whether it be from a rifle or from one of these pistols here. Most collectors have at least one, but due to the weak caliber of the .22, aside from them taking them to the range every once in a while, they're usually regarded as shelf candy for the most part, though they have remained a popular choice as casual sport shooting and plinking tools. Now, before we get into this, what's the first thing we need to do? That's right, we're going to make sure that the firearm is safe to handle. Let's just get this out of the way here. First, we're going to eject the magazine using this button right here. Okay, now we're going to make sure that the chamber is empty. If you've been watching my channel for a while, you might be a little confused about this slide. This is actually a bolt action slide, but it functions the same way as a normal one. You just grab the little grips on the back here and pull. There we go. Nice and empty. So now that we know that this is clear, it's safe, and we continue to handle it safely. So what's the story with this one? Well, I walked into my local pawn and I saw this in the case, and I'm just a sucker for these classic looking firearms. Pistols that look like they just jumped right out of the 40s and 50s always catch my eye. What really caught my attention though was just how clean this one looked. I've seen a few of these go through a few pawn shops and they look pretty well worn. This one didn't even look like it had been fired more than a handful of times. I asked to take a look at it, and I'm a big sucker for the 1911. So when I felt this grip, I knew I was going to have to pick it up. Now this was $275, which for the pistol itself I thought was a little steep for secondhand. So I said, oh, that's just a bit much for a pistol with one magazine. Well, the guy behind the counter knows me a little too well now, so he goes, oh, no, that includes the hard case and another magazine. And after seeing it all together in the nice little bundle, I just couldn't say no. I ended up grabbing it. Now, I know what you're thinking. $275 sounds a little high for a .22, even with the nice case and another magazine. Yeah, I would tend to agree with you, but people just adore these things. The craftsmanship is amazing. Even people who don't like .22 as a caliber love the feel of these. The Mark IIIs here go from about the low 300s to about $350 online, and they're only going up in price. So, does it match the hype? Well, first impressions, feels really good to hold. Has a nice, solid construction feel to it. Standard blued finish, very clean, pretty weighty on the top. The barrel definitely holds most of the weight here. Weighs about 42 ounces unloaded, so pretty heavy. 5.5-inch barrel length on the inside, about 9 3/4 total inch length here. It naturally sort of flows with your hand. It's almost like you're pointing your finger at what you want to shoot at. Fixed front sights with the adjustable rear. Seems pretty easy to align in a pinch, so that's good. We're off to a pretty good start so far. Standard polymer frame and grips here. Nothing too exciting. Feels well made for sure. And we got the magazine release here and the safety. Speaking of, what safeties do we have? Not very many. Some models do have the magazine safety. This one does not. So this one can fire with or without the magazine inside of it. So that means when we load this magazine in here and we load it up, it can fire with and it can fire without as well. So that's something to keep in mind if you purchase one of these. Now, one of my favorite things about this pistol is actually the magazine itself. I love these things. They have the little button right here that you can pull on to make loading a little bit easier, which I think is great. It makes this very accessible for new shooters or people whose hands might not be strong enough to load something like a 9mm without a speed reloader. So how does it come apart? Well, this is where it starts to get a little tricky. The Mark III, while easier than the previous models, in my opinion, still leaves a lot to be desired in the disassembly and reassembly department. So let's hope I can do this properly now that the camera is on, so bear with me here. So first thing we're going to do is make sure that there's no spring tension in here. All right, that's good. So we've already dropped the magazine. Now you may have already noticed this little lever on the back of the grip here. We want to open this up like so, just like this. It's going to open to the side, and we're going to pull it all the way down, just like that. It's just going to slide out. So let's set that aside. Now from here, we're going to pull out the bolt, just like this. Set that aside. Now we're going to get a nice firm grip on the barrel, just like this. I'm going to place our thumb here, and we're just going to pull out. You can see it move and lift it forward. We're going to pretend like there's a hinge right here by the thumb. Now, some of you who might have a Mark IV know that there's actually a hinge here, but we're not lucky enough to have this with the Mark III and olders. But then this is just going to lift off and come apart, just like that. Now that this is apart, let's go ahead and take a look at all these pieces and make sure that there's nothing out of the ordinary. We're going to look for rust, corrosion, broken parts or springs, that sort of thing. Looks pretty good. Take a look here. The bolt. It's got a little bit of wear on it. Oh, looks like a little bit of old powder residue here. Nothing too bad. All right. And the barrel itself doesn't look too bad. I'd say we're in pretty good shape with this one. Now that that's done, it's time for the fun part, reassembly. Now this is where it can get a little bit tricky. We want the mechanisms inside the frame to be completely flat, all right? So don't do what I do when I first started to reassemble this. I had actually, it's locked currently, but this was actually flipped all the way over this way, and I was struggling for 20 minutes. Why couldn't I get this stupid thing on here? And it was user error, as is most of the time the case. So make sure that this piece is nice and flat, just like this. Now you see this little square right here? We want that to line up with this little square right here. So we're kind of going to remember, pretend that there's a little hinge right here. We're going to line that square up and kind of lock it back into place. See how we can push it and it sort of locks itself. That's exactly what we want. Now that we make sure that the barrel is seated against the notch, you shouldn't feel any wiggling if it's in place properly. Next, we're going to take the bolt here. Now on this model, you can see the little Ruger logo here. That's how you know it's right side up. So it won't go in if you have it upside down. It's not going to go in past here. So go ahead and flip it the right way up. Slide it all the way through. Just like that. Perfect. Okay, this is where it starts to get a little complicated. This piece here, at least on my model, it needs to come up where you see the top of this nub come all the way through the top right here. Mine likes to get stuck about right here, so it takes a little finagling. So let's see if we can do this now that the cameras are rolling. We're going to slide it through the bottom. You can see the hole right there. That's where it's going to go once it's inside. So up through the bottom. All right, we got it first time. Not bad. Okay, now this, again, I keep saying this is where it gets tricky, but it's like each step it gets a little bit trickier, so bear with me. Now, we're going to point the pistol up to the sky, okay? So we're going to make sure you keep the pressure on here. We're going to turn it upside down, point it up to the sky like so, okay? Make sure your pin is still poking out like that. Make sure that nub is still there. Now we're going to load a magazine. You can see why this can be a little bit tricky for new people. So we're going to load the magazine in like so. Make sure you get that nice click in there. Now we're going to hold down the trigger. Okay. We're going to take this lever, going to put it all the way in as far as we can. Okay. I'm going to push the lever in, release the trigger, eject the magazine like that, and then slap this down like that. I see it's nice and flush now. If we did this right, the function check should work no problem. So we're going to load another magazine in here. Let's do a function check. Okay, that's good. Slide lock works. That's good. What do you know? We did it right. Who'd have thought? So it's a little difficult. People who are novices, or, if this is your first firearm, that's going to be the trickiest part, is putting this thing back together. And you should note, because this is a 22 ammunition is very, very dirty. You're going to need to clean this thing a lot more than you will standard, 9mm or 45. So you're going to have to get really, really good and proficient at taking this thing apart and putting it back together if you end up getting a Mark III. The Mark IVs are much, much more simpler to take apart. They just have a single button you push and the hinge just opens. This doesn't even come totally off anymore. It just opens and then snaps back closed. But once you do it 2 or 3 times, you'll kind of start to get the feel of it. You'll start to get the hang of it, pointing it up, holding down the trigger, snapping that closed, pushing the magazine back out, letting that pop back out, snapping it back closed. It seems like a lot, but after you do it a couple of times, it'll kind of start to make sense. All right, now that it's all back together, magazine loads, fires well, function check is good, magazine's good. Let's take this thing down to the range and see if it matches the hype. Today's range ammunition is a 40 grain Aguila in the white box and a 45 grain Federal in the red box. I'll be shooting 4 targets today, 2 targets with the Aguila and 2 targets with the Federal. All targets will be at 7 yards. Let's see how it does. And we are back from the range. Well, we had a couple of failure to feed malfunctions with the smaller grain Aguila, but other than that, it performed quite well. The sights were extremely easy to hone in on and get the hang of. Kickback was virtually non-existent, but most 22s are. However, this one, having the longer barrel really helps keep that muzzle pointed downrange and makes reacquiring the target extremely easy. If failure to feed malfunctions are the worst we can expect from this thing, I think we got ourselves a pretty nice little 22 for the collection. Failure to feed on this is a pretty easy malfunction to fix, luckily. The bolt action is very easy to work with. I really enjoyed shooting this today. I can see why a lot of people like to use this for target shooting or plinking. Very, very fun. There's three things I consider when rating my firearms: price, performance, and condition. Price. For $275, it's hard to beat what we got. I love the branded hard case it came with. Most pawn shop firearms will have some sort of case that it comes with, but it's usually some off-brand or maybe a holster. This is a nice, sturdy case, and the extra magazine is very nice too. Off-brand magazines usually sell for around 50 to 20, while Ruger branded hover around the 25 to 45 mark. So I'll have to give this a 4 out of 5. Pretty good price for this. Performance. Well, malfunctions are never fun to deal with, but they keep you on your toes. We didn't have any failures to eject or any catastrophic failures, so that's good. But with the bad, we have to consider the good. This thing is damn accurate, and it's fun to squeeze the trigger too. 4 out of 5. Condition. We did notice some old powder residue, and well, we had it taken apart. But overall, I'd say it looks to be in very good shape. It might not be fresh off the factory line, but it's close. Another 4 out of 5. Well, that's a bunch of 4s across the board. What a great score for a great gun. Definitely pick one of these up for your collection if you haven't already. While it might not be a practical carry weapon, it's great to practice with and it's fun to shoot at the range. Ruger lives up to their reputation with this one. This has been PSP. Thanks for watching. See you next time.